In the earlier part, we have seen the definition of democracy and merits and demerits of democracy. Now we will see the broader meaning of democracy, how to make meaning of the democracy. Here in this part we will see. In this chapter we have considered the meaning of democracy in a limited and descriptive sense. We have understood democracy as a form of government. This way of defining democracy helps us to identify a clear set of minimal features that a democracy must have. Through this discussion, we have studied the clear features of a democracy it must need. The most common form that democracy takes in our times is that of a representative democracy. Nowadays, it is followed the representative democracy. This is the common form of democracy followed throughout the world. You have already read about this in the previous classes. In the countries we are called democracy, all the people do not rule. The majority is allowed to take decisions on behalf of the people. The representatives are working in behalf of the people. The party which is getting majority, they forms the government, means people are supporting them to take decisions or work in behalf of the people. Even the majority does not rule directly. The majority is not ruling directly. The majority of people rule through their elected representative. They are ruling through their elected representative. Modern democracies involve such large number of people that it is physically impossible. In the modern democracies, the representative democracy is followed because it is not possible to physically all people should come together and take collective decision. Next, even if they could, if it is possible to come together, maybe it will be made possible, but the citizen does not have the time. People don't have time to come together or discuss or keep their problems. The desire of skill to take decision to take part in all the decisions, and they are not having that skill to take part in the all decisions. So these are some facts we have to accept. That is why the representative democracy is accepted throughout the world. This gives us a clear but minimal understanding of democracy. This clarity helps us distinguish democracies from non-democratic. So through this discussion, we have studied the democratic and non-democratic government, but it does not allow us to distinguish between democracies and good democracies. Just we are distinguishing in between the democracy and non-democracy. It is not allowed us to distinguish in between good democracy and democracy. It allows us to see the operation of democracy beyond government. For this, we need to turn to broader meaning of democracy. That is why we are looking the broader meaning of a democracy. Sometimes we use democracy for organizations other than the government. It is always we are not using only for the government as the term democracy. Anywhere we can use the term democracy for organization also. We are always the following statements you are listening. We are a very democratic family. In our family, democracy is allowed there, or the family is a democratic family. It means there is a respect to the opinion of everyone, and everyone is free to keep their interest. Next, we again listen. I don't like teachers who do not allow students to speak and ask questions in the class. I would like to have teachers with a democratic temperament. So we like that teachers, those allow you to speak, to express, to ask question. If one teacher is not allowing you to ask question, that time you don't like that teacher. So you like the democratic teacher. One leader and his family members decides everything in this party. How can they talk about of the democracy? One leader and his family. In sometime it happens in the party, one leader and his family members are only involving in the final decision making process, or their decision is the final decision. How could they speak about the democracy? These statements always we listen. It means you understand very well the meaning of a democracy, or we adopt the democracy in our social life also, not only as a part of a government, but also it is a part of our living way. These ways of using the word democracy go back to its basic sense of a method taking decisions. So, taking decision, this is the best sense we can come to know through these discussions or through these statements. A democratic decision involves consultation with the consent of all those who are affected by that decision. In a democratic decision, the consent of all is accepted. Those who are not powerful have the same say in taking the decision as though those who are powerful. This can apply to the government or a family or any other organization. Thus, democracy is also a principle that can be applied in any sphere of life. The democracy we can apply anywhere in our life. Sometimes we use the word democracy not to describe any existing government, but to set up an ideal standard that all democracies must aim to become. Throughout this discussion, we came to know it is not possible that every principle should be followed. But we can keep some aim in the democracy. Every democracy can try to acquire, to achieve the aim. True democracies will come to this country only when no one goes hungry to bed. The true democracy, everyone should be keep that achievement, keep that desire. No one should go hungry to the bed. This is the aim of the democracy. If one is keeping, that is the best way toward the walking the best democracy. The next aim, in a democracy, every citizen must be able to play equal role in the decision making. For this, you don't need just an equal right to vote. Every citizen needs to have equal information, basic education, and equal resources and a lot of commitment. These are the aims should be followed by the all in a democracy. If we take these ideals seriously, then no country in the world is a democracy. There are some faults in every democracy in every country. Yet, an understanding of democracy as an ideal reminds us of why we value democracy. It enables us to judge an existing democracy and identify its weaknesses. Through these discussions, we understand the best democracy, the principles of democracy, and weaknesses. It helps us to distinguish between a minimal democracy and a good democracy. In this book, we do not deal much with the expanded notion of democracy. Our focus here is with some core institutional features of democracy as a form of government. We are studying the core features of the democracy and the form of government. We are not criticizing the democracy or the form of government, that is the democracy. The fate of the country depends not just on what the rulers do, but mainly on what we, the citizens, do. Always we cannot depend on the government or the rulers. It is depend on the citizens how to make or how to bring the best democracy in the practice. This is what distinguishes democracy from other governments. Other forms of government like monarchy, dictatorship or one party rule do not require all citizens to take part in the politics. The governments who are other than the democracy are interested to keep citizens away from the decision making process. They always try to keep the citizens away from the decision making process and themselves alone they can take the decision. But in a democracy, it depends on the active political participation by all the citizens. That is why the study of democracy must focus on the democratic politics. So here we have studied the meaning of democracy, the features of democracy, merits, demerits of democracy, and the broader meaning of the democracy. Through this conclusion, through this discussion, we can conclude that democracy is the best way of the government, but the government is not enough to take decision. The active participation of people is also important.